All right, we're live. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Threecast. I'm your host, Matthew Weber. I'm joined by Vincent Hoy.
Yep.
Riggy is off this week. He apparently just got home from work, so he's not going to join us. So this week, Vince has this labeled as the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit critique.
Yep.
You're talking about both the movies and the books we're going to talk about, right?
Well, it's more the movie translations, just because I think now that everything's done and settled, and we've had enough time to deal with it. I think there's a whole bunch of things relative to translation from books, the greed of the corporate cinema model, and even just like how long you can actually drag something out and how it sets a precedent for other movie franchises.
Yeah, because so in case nobody's ever read The Hobbit before, those of you listening, The Hobbit's like what, 230, maybe 250 pages, something like that. It's not very long.
Pretty thin.
Yeah, let's see if it's on the internet. How many pages is The Hobbit? Come on, Google, come through for us. Again, Google sucks.
Well, it's not even just the length of that one. I think the relative comparison, though, is like The Hobbit was really a drawn-out movie franchise, just trying to capitalize on the success of Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was like 3 actual books, and they made it into 3 movies, right? It made total sense to a certain degree. They were very successful. And I mean, a lot of people criticize, say, The Hobbit for not being as profitable as the original Lord of the Rings series because of the lack of a solid ensemble cast, the kind of lack of a good strong story. But the reality is that people know that The Hobbit did not make money because A, it was running off of fumes of the Lord of the Rings. They got greedy. And B, it was really trying to play out a story that was A, simple, and B, also it was a short story effectively, and it should have been one movie. And everyone knows that it could have been one single movie. And this is what's kind of precipitated this problem where you got like things like whether it's Hunger Games or Harry Potter, where they're just dragging stuff out just simply not because they want to do fan service. That's under the mask of fan service, but they basically are saying, look, we want to make money, and we know that it'll cost us a negligible amount of money to just extend the filming time, like to record like back-to-back sequels, and then just play it all out so we can just capitalize on the long tail for financial gain.
Yeah, I think it was the last Harry Potter film that they split into. I think that was the first franchise that actually did that, and then once they saw how successful that was, I mean, then the Hunger Games did it, and then like recently, I think that like the Divergent announced that they were going to do that for that trilogy. The Hobbit did it. I mean, it's just several, and you're right, it's a blatant money grab. Now, I mean, I have my own problems with The Hobbit. I've never cared for the books, so I went into the movies knowing that I really wouldn't care for them just because the plot of the book bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Lord of the Rings. So technically the Lord of the Rings in movie form obviously came out first. So let's talk about the Lord of the Rings. It came out with 3 like hour and 45, 2 hour long movies. And then they came out with the extended.
Weren't they all 3 hours?
Say it again, Vince.
Weren't each of those movies like almost 3 hours? I thought I remember going to the theater and going, oh my God, look at the playtime, and then having to book like my eating habits around when those movies were on.
Well, I think I'm not sure. I may be completely wrong, but I don't think that the originals were as long as you expect. It was the extended version, which is basically the normal version now.
Mm-hmm.
It's so long because like now, if you watch the extended version of all 3 films, it's like 12 hours long. Some crazy number. So those movies, I mean, granted, those books are very big, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about translation from book to film, in terms of the Lord of the Rings, I mean, basically the book is a musical.
Yep.
And there's no music in the movie, like hardly at all.
The instrumental stuff is very good. The Howard Shore stuff is good, but you're right. They don't sing as they do in the books as often, and they completely they completely eliminate characters that like the Fellowship kind of engages and saves
Tom
them.
Bombadillo from the beginning of Fellowship of the Rings is not in the movie at all.
I don't think they have very much on the other wizards too, even though they have a bit of a
Yeah, like the Well, now see, like in the Hobbit, you get to see a second good wizard, the brown guy.
Yeah, Redriel or something like that.
Yeah, but you like in the Lord of the Rings, you don't at all in the movie.
Well, they do explain it though, because that's how the eagles come in at the end, right? It's not just simply like Gandalf's got them in his back pocket. He's got his hookups, that dude. But anyways, the thing that was really successful with Lord of the Rings was like I mean we can just go through it very quickly. It was a really compelling story. It did make sense for the overarching story arc to have multiple movies. The Lord of the Rings itself was a very high impact movie, and it set the tone for each successive one, right? Like you saw the amazing special effects and the incredible music that was done in the first Lord of the Rings, and then of course when you get into the second one, it's just yet another like over the top special effects thing. You start seeing like Gollum really come into the light and become like a character, and that was incredible CG effects. And of course the culmination of it all with those big ghost armies and huge epic battle scenes towards the end with Return of the King. Those really emphasized the kind of power behind the story. It was very successful, and again, I cannot deny the fact that the director Peter Jackson was very good about distilling key ideas and translating what arguably was a very good epic book into a really good epic movie series. Unfortunately, when you get to the Hobbit series, it's just a train wreck because there is no real advancement, and if anything, it's really just about teasing. It's always about teasing. In the first movie, the Hobbit. Crap. What was the title of the Hobbit movie? I don't know. It was even stupider because they actually made like stupid subtitles for all the Hobbit
Something
movies.
like Journey, right?
Yeah. Oh crap. Unexpected Journey.
I think it's the Unexpected Journey. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the first one.
But then, then the Desolation of Smog, and then I can't remember what the last one was, right?
Battle of the Five Armies.
Yeah. So the thing that really gets me is that they really tried to break that book into some seriously epic conditions, and unlike the Lord of the Rings series, where they're editing down, to try to make it more suitable for the film as a medium. What you find in The Hobbit is that they're just kind of injecting stuff and almost like Tolkien fan fiction or extra stuff from the Silmarillion to really fluff up what is effectively a really thin story. Like the Battle of the Five Armies, I don't recall that in the Hobbit book.
It's there, but it takes I don't know. It's maybe 12 pages long. I mean, it's literally towards the end. I'm not sure that the actual battles in the book. I can't remember, but they were definitely rearing up to it because that's basically how Gandalf splits off from the group of dwarves and Bilbo to go search for what's end up going to be Sauron, right?
Yeah.
So there's that whole plot device of him kind of getting distracted from the main point of the movie is how they were kind of connecting it to the Lord of the Rings, and that's the reason. I mean, that was like the whole reason why Orlando Bloom was in the movie, to try to connect the two franchises, because otherwise they didn't have. I mean, yeah, Bilbo was there, but Bilbo wasn't a major character in the Lord of the Rings at all. I mean, he was there from the beginning and the end.
Yeah, he's just getting ready. Right.
So that they had to come up with some way to connect the whole franchise, and that was how they chose to do it with. I know that is in the book, but I don't remember it being as big of a part because most of the part is they spend a lot of time with the trolls. They spend a lot of time.
With the temptation, and then the whole village thing, and then the kind of artificial, interracial relationship.
Yeah, the biggest. So, let me just get out of this way because I've been, aching to talk about this. Can we just talk about killing the dragon?
The shooting it.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, whether it's the book or the movie, I'm not sure if the movie ends this way. I can't remember because I only watched the first part of the third one. But so the point of the books was a group of dwarves and a hobbit go to kill the dragon. Okay, that was the point of the book. So you would expect that one of the dwarves or the hobbit would kill the dragon, but And that's not actually the case. Some third character, the village, kills the character from Lake Town or whatever it is.
Yep.
So just from some dude. That's in the book for literally like 10 pages before he kills the dragon. And that's always bothered me. It's like it'd be like watching 8 films of Harry Potter, expecting Harry Potter to kill Voldemort, and then all of a sudden, I don't know.
Done.
Yeah. So some douchebag off on the side that you never saw until like the last 10 minutes of the film decided to kill Voldemort. Like, what the hell was the point? You know, it's stupid. Or well, I can't use Star Wars as a good, because he turned good in the end. Can stick to his damn morals. Anyways, I just wanted to get that rant out of the way. That way I can move past it and get angry about it again some other time.
But you know what? Like, we might as well stick on that, at least in principle, because there are lots of liberties that they take advantage of in The Hobbit. And the thing that for you bothers you is that they make such a big deal out of like the bards taking out the Smog, and arguably, yes, Smog is huge in the whole entire Hobbit thing, but like, again, when it's so clear that they're fluffing it up and they're putting that interracial thing, they really make a pronouncement of the 5 armies. They add stuff about the buildup of Sauron. There's so many things that just really mire the movie, the Hobbit trilogy, and and you were talking about Star Wars. I think that in some instances you kind of have to go with the rule of 3. Like, the Lord of the Rings was very good as 3. It broke up because the books were in 3. In a similar way, Star Wars has multiple trilogies. But you know what? Lord of the Rings should have followed through and saw what maybe Star Wars actually learned from the Lord of the Rings and their Hobbit situation, because Star Wars has now embarked on not only the trilogy stuff, but then they say, look, man, we're going to make one-off movies. And so far, they've been fairly successful. Mind you, it's fairly early, but they've been successful in saying, look, we're not going to try to drag it out to make a trilogy and another trilogy and another trilogy. They're saying, like, we got a trilogy, and we're going to have these like other movies that just fill in gaps, and they're one-offs. And I think the fans really like that. I think that the marketplace really likes it, because you can't confuse things. Like, I mean, in this case,
can you imagine if they took one of the movies in the new Star Wars trilogy and then decided to split it in 2? I mean, people would go batshit crazy if they had to wait. I don't know remember any of the titles, but if they split that Star Wars 7 or whatever up into 2 parts and made it 7.5 and 7.35 or something crazy, I mean, the fans would go crazy. There'd be riots in the street in Orlando, Florida. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure about that, but you're right. The fans would go kind of nuts. But at the end of the day, I think that what we have, though, is a situation where the Hollywood movie studios are really getting greedy. They're just kind of jumping and dumping more and more things. Like, I mean, if it was in their power, I'm pretty sure that they would find like one of those really one-off like short story books and make like a trilogy out of that, just because they know that they can drag things out. In fact, I would say that it has repercussions in terms of writing. Do you think for a second that like young adult or like fiction writers are thinking about in single books? I think a lot of people are thinking about making trilogies just simply because they want to capitalize on the possibilities of making money on movie rights.
Yeah. I think that's probably the case with some of the bigger writers, especially some of the writers that have had movies made of their works before are probably now looking towards making their future stuff splittable, you know what I mean? So that they can, it can be split into.
Yeah, and like, I agree that there's a desire to do that. Like, I mean, as a fan of various, sci-fi and fiction series, I can appreciate that. But at a cinematic level, there is a difference between the medium of film versus TV. That's why The Lord of the Rings is appropriate for epic film. However, Game of Thrones, it's more appropriate for, as you get a really good dose of it. I have a sneaking suspicion that Martin, the author of all the Game of Thrones books, it's not a surprise that he's already talking about making 4 or 5 spin-off prequel series that go for television to support the existing success and basic fan base of Game of Thrones. But it would be heresy for him to say, let's get greedy and do like movies for every single equivalent of an episode in Game of Thrones. So I think that we're seeing this kind of success on one level of multiple episodic content for like TV shows. but we're seeing that I think it's starting to get grating. I think the general public is starting to realize that the Hobbits, the Harry Potter kind of scenarios, the Hunger Games scenario of franchises is bad. But if that's the case, it's probably best shoved into, say, the realm of television. Like, I mean, Star Trek was kind of able to do that, sporadically put in movies. Mind you, they kept on decreasingly becoming good. And then, of course, they'd always have these continuously good series on that where they could actually drive topical content on a weekly basis.
Yeah, well, I think TV is quite a bit different because one thing, you don't have to leave your house for television, right? So, I mean, if you're going to see, so, I mean, obviously you don't have to leave your house for a movie either, but then you have to wait, to watch on DVD or whatever. But, so people are lazy, they don't want to leave their house. Also, TV content is very much rewatchable. It's something that you can watch over and over again, whereas a lot of people don't. They see a movie and then they just, they don't watch it again, or they don't watch it again for years and years. So then there's because the content on TV is shorter, it's very much more of an addiction kind of thing. So binge watching, you watch an hour and 40 minutes of House of Cards, and the story still you want to see how it continues, so you watch it over and over again. And I think that one thing that like the movies are trying to do is kind of to catch on into that addiction of binge watching and episodic content or whatever, but because movies are a lot longer, take a lot longer to produce and come out, it's just that they're not the same type of content, Then and they don't do as good a job, I don't think, especially in movies like The Hobbit that are so. I mean, I think that like we said earlier, the Lord of the Rings fits into a trilogy and probably would have fit into 6 movies, if they wanted to do it that way, and if they did it well, because there's enough content there. They could have added, a lot of the characters that they skipped over. They could have spent a lot more time in the mountains, like they do in the books. I mean, they go through those mountains in like 3 or 4 times in the books, and they only do it like once in the first movie.
Man.
Yeah. So, so I mean, like Lord of the Rings could have thoroughly. I mean, they could have went a lot longer, and they had a lot more content to work with. But whereas The Hobbit is just such a short book, you know what I mean? And then they had to stretch it so thin to get it out through. I mean, I suppose I could have saw 2 movies, kinda.
Yeah.
But I mean, 3 movies is just way too much. I mean, the story should have ended at this, in the second, movie, and in the third one was just completely extraneous. It's just. So I mean, I think that if they're really going to do this, they have to choose content that actually fits the
medium.
Yeah, it fits the ability to stretch it out over that much. I mean, I don't know if you ever read Stephen King's The Dome.
No, you are a big fan of this, man. Did that show get canceled?
Yeah, the show got canceled because it was terrible.
Okay.
It was literally bad. I mean, there's something about, all right, so totally off topic, but there's something about Stephen King's books that don't translate well to movies or TV shows. They just don't, and I think that a lot of the reason why is because they have to take out so much. You know what I mean? That's usually my argument for the reason why Stephen King books don't translate well to the screen. But with the Under the Dome, they changed everything. I mean, literally, it bore no resemblance to the book at all. I mean, other than the dome, everything else was different. I mean, people who died actually lived all the way through. People who lived all the way through died. The reason behind the dome was different. I mean, it was not good. But anyways, like the Under the Dome, that book's like 1,000 pages long. That would do really well in a multi-format movie or a television show if they did it, correctly. There was so much content there that it worked with. Anyways.
Well, okay. Actually, you know what? While we're talking about this, like my issue is that I think that there is actually a finite number of episodes that you can actually handle as a movie before you go, hey, you know what? It should have been a TV show. Like, admittedly, the Star Wars franchise, for example, has a lot of movies, but the thing is that they do them in like decades. Like, so there's like 3 and then stop, 3 and then stop. Whereas like, I look at, say, Hunger Games or the the Divergent series, and I'm like, that could be like that could be like Game of Thrones, where they can actually spend a hell lot of money per episode and do it over the span of like one season, kind of like what they did for like Stranger Things, where you're right. I agree that there's a lot of content that you just want to binge, and like when stuff like Stranger Things and stuff happens, it's really digestible, and it's like you get it, and it's episodic. And I'd say the production values, like say for example, like shows like Game of Thrones, or even like Stranger Things, you would say that that's a decent movie. It's not like super special effects Jurassic Park, but I mean it's convincing and not bad. But then I start looking at other things where I'm like, did you ever have to read Handmaid's Tale?
It sounds very familiar, but if I did, it was probably like middle school or something, or early high school.
Handmaid's Tale is a series that just has gone nuts on TV as of late. But the thing is, I remember having to read Handmaid's Tale when I was in not kindergarten, but when I was a little kid. And it's again like a book, and it's done by Margaret Atwood, and it's a hugely popular TV series. And I can't help but wonder, like I've never watched the TV series, but I can't help but wonder how the hell can they stretch out a dystopian kind of society, a one-pager book into like an entire multi-season TV show. Like it baffles my mind how greedy people are when they want to just slow play things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say this when you mentioned the Divergent series, that would have done very well in television instead of a movie. Just because it has a core concept that they could have come up with extra content around, and it flows several different plot lines through that they could follow in different episodes. I know I've never seen the movies, mainly because I think I skipped the one that Ricky assigned, or we never got to it or something. I don't even remember.
I don't know. I remember
probably.
I watched one of them, and I think
maybe
I don't even know the difference between Divergent and the Maze Runner series. They're all the same to me, man.
Yeah, like I read the first and second book. I think maybe I never made it through the second one. I can't remember. I read all 3 Hunger Games a couple times. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead.
It's just weird to see all these shows where it's like privileged white kids put into scenarios where they have to fight for their lives. I don't really get it.
There's a couple black people in Hunger Games, at least in the book. I'm not sure about the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never watched those.
We could talk about gender and race in the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings if you wanted to. It's kind of embarrassing. I mean, even so, there's not a female character in the book in the Hobbit. There's not at all. And I don't think he explains race at all in that either.
I think the races are the like dwarves versus elves versus humans versus trolls. I don't think they, but I mean, it's interesting in the more recent Hobbit. Like I'm a sucker. I'm actually looking forward to the Lord of the Rings, the new Mordor game. And I'm telling you right now, they actually have like black elves and like Asian people and stuff. So it's interesting to see how they do that in the video games. But you're right. They don't have females in the book in the Hobbit. They have Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. They have Éowyn, being the kind of damsel in distress. But admittedly, even in the Lord of the Rings, they're bringing up of not North Star. What's her name? Not Éowyn. Who's Liv Tyler's character?
That's Éowyn.
Oh, is it Éowyn? Then who's the
blonde one? So there's two blonde ones. One's an elf. One's in Rohan.
Rohan. One's a Rohan girl. What's her name? I thought that was Éowyn.
No. She's blonde. This blonde girl. Liv Tyler's dark haired, right?
Yeah. And then the one that's from Rohan is the horse rider girl. She's like I am no man or whatever. I can't remember.
I don't. She plays the Joan of Arc character, basically.
Yeah. But like you have those, and that's about it. And admittedly, I mean, given the kind of disposition of the entire of story, you're following like 9 dudes, so I can kind of get that. But
so that was Éowyn. Her name was Éowyn. What was Liv Tyler's character's name then?
That's what I was asking. Oh crap, man. See, that's how bad it was because
Arwen. Seriously, Arwen. Come on,
dude. Honestly, you know what? If it weren't for the TV series, I would not understand Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones has the same crappy naming system too, man. They're like Viserys, Varys. I mean, if there were not a TV series, I would not know who is what based on just the writing on the wall, man.
Yeah, I stopped watching Game of Thrones after they killed off the only character I cared about in first season.
Well,
so he did in the books too. I mean, so I can't really blame the TV series. But I mean, I only cared about the Ned Stark guy, and they chopped off his head in the first book. So
I know.
I stopped paying attention. Oh, spoilers! My bad.
Yeah, it's like only like what, like 6-7 years, man.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, if maybe somebody hasn't watched it.
Wait, but aren't those books really old too? Like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought
he's been writing them for a long time. Yeah, I'm not sure when the first song.
So how can these guys actually? How can the producers actually say, "Yeah, come on, hey Martin, go write up some more books for like 5 other series," when it takes you can't even write the books for like your own current series?
Well, say it's like, all right. So there's a guy named Patrick Rothfuss. He writes some fantastic novels. I mean, he's like a extraordinary writer. Writes. I mean, he literally, if he could write faster, just a little bit. I mean, he'd probably be my favorite author of all times. But he's been working on the trilogy called the King Chronicles. Okay. Basically, it's a fantasy, not trilogy or whatever. I mean, it's right in my alley. But he's been working on the third one for like 7 years, and it's like 10% done or something. He's really like cruel to his fan, because like I mean, fans are needy, right? So especially in the day of social media, and they can contact their authors. So like, when you hurry up with this book, why aren't you writing faster? Mm-hmm. So I mean, I can understand why he would get annoyed with that, but I mean, he's like right from the start. He's like, I write, as slow as I do, because that's the way I write, and that's fine. It's just like so freaking long. But I think Martin's the same way. The first one was the Game of Thrones, came out in 1996. So not as long as I thought it was. Then 98. That's
too long, man.
So it's like every two years, from 98 and then 2000, and then 5 years for the next one, and then 6 years for the next one. And that was 2011. So that's been another 6 years.
So basically, the more popular he becomes, the more he can't do his book.
Well, at a certain point, all right, so you were talking about naming conventions in the Name of the Thrones. Yep. He kills off so many characters, he has to come up with so many more names. So he has to keep coming up with names for every character he kills off, so he has to keep introducing original characters. I mean, you can't just, this isn't fan fiction where you can just borrow, somebody else's character. So, I mean, he has to come up with names and personalities and plot lines surrounding these guys so that you care when they die. So, I mean, it's no wonder that it's taking him longer and longer, because he keeps killing off and coming up with new plot lines.
Running out of names to kill people. That's hilarious.
Right? I wonder, given how long it's been, I mean, it's been 20 years since the first one was published, over 20 years. I wonder how I mean, I'm never going to read all of them to find out, but I wonder how continuous, or how he's doing in terms of continuity. Like if he's being, consistent in his plot lines. I mean, if he has an idea of where he's going to go, or if now that he's become such a success in, on HBO, if he's altering his original idea of where the thing ends, because kind of going back to what we talked about in this episode, he might be so enamored with his success on TV, he might draw out the book series past the point where he probably should have ended it.
Well, they actually have stated that they're going to do stuff in all likelihood prior to the actual start of the Game of Thrones, like maybe 10 years before the Game of Thrones starts. But I think that he's not. I don't want to be cynical and think that he's kind of stalling to kind of slow play to get more cachet and tease fans. I think he's just genuinely faced with a bunch of hurdles on getting his book done, and quite frankly, I think that he's really got to live out the shadow of the two Davids that are actually the producers of the show, because they've actually started taking the mantle as of this past season to basically drive the story. And I think that though the books are kind of scalped. A lot of content is taken out of the books compared to what you find in the movies. Sorry, compared to what you find in the TV show. Martin is still able to keep to the core strengths of following through with his characters, but allegedly, and I don't know how things work, but there are some wide variances between the book and the TV show, and at the same time, a lot of people have noticed that in spite of all that, Martin does make sure that he keeps that continuity going, and you can kind of see some points where he actually sticks to his guns and actually has some of those components carry through, and like little things that you see at the beginning of the first season are still having impact in the end of the 6th or 7th season that we're at right now.
So this is my last point for tonight. I think that the reason why people get so upset with these slow authors, other than that they're greedy and want things now and very impatient, is that they get spoiled by the likes of like David Baldacci or James Patterson or any of those
Letters.
Well, what's the name of that kind of fiction that's very popular? Pulp fiction. Like, so it's very the author comes out with 3 novels a year. I mean, and granted they're different characters, and he doesn't. I mean, they're cookie cutter, so they're all exactly the freaking same. So I used to really like David Baldacci's stuff, but then you just read so many of them and you realize they're all exactly the same. They're basically NCIS episodes based in a book. They're procedurals. They all have exactly the same.
Wow. So he preceded Dan Brown. Wow.
Yeah. Right. So I mean, of course we can't really explain Dan Brown, because if it's true that he's using the procedural format and they're all cookie cutter, why has it taken so damn long to come out with a book? Granted, I understand that the explanation is that he's researches the cities and all that shit, but we'll just not get into that. But I mean, the David Baldacci and James Patterson and even Tom Clancy started to do. They've done it with all the Tom Clancy novels now that Tom Clancy's dead and gone. That kind of like they did with Robert Ludlum. They continued on his series, and they're all like cookie cutter. They're all exactly the same. That's the reason why they can release 12 of them at the same time. It's the same thing with the video games. It's why there's like 9 different Rainbow Sixes that all came out within like a 3-year span, because they're all basically the same. So I mean, and that's something that can't be said for the likes of George R.R. Martin, who takes his time and creates this vast universe of things, or Peter H. Hamilton, who creates a gigantic universe and different species of aliens and trying to come up with wars and names, and it takes a lot of work to actually come up with something that's not just a NCIS episode. So that's mine.
I never read that stuff, but I'll take your word for it. But I mean, you're right. We should reserve that stuff for other conversations, because I think we both have similar beliefs relative to like the absolute garbage turning out and churning out of terrible things.
Yeah, I mean, now you know that I like Jason Statham for no discernible reason. His movies are universally terrible, but I watch them anyways. There are some books that were like that as I moved out of my teens into my 20s that were just really terrible books, but I read them anyways because I don't know whether it was a loyalty to the author or it's just because they were easy to read or something. I don't know. I mean, everybody has those things that are just other people consider absolutely terrible, but they read them.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's other. I don't know. I just have a really big respect for. I mean, even though I don't read the Song of Ice and Fire series, I mean, because of the continuous, he doesn't have a character around long enough for me to care about them. But I have respect for what he does, because it takes a lot of effort to go through and actually create something that isn't the normal drivel that we have, on the bookshelf that gets bestseller status these days.
Well, don't get too attached to it, because if you ever go back to watching the TV series, it's like it's on fast forward by the time he hits season 6 and 7, man.
Yeah, I don't know that I would. See, I watched like the first however many episodes it took for him to kill the main character, and then I stopped watching. That's exactly how long I'm very character invested. So I mean, I like Harry Potter. I got despite my qualms with Star Wars. It's a very character-driven, franchise. There's a reason why they brought Luke and Leia back for the new trilogy, because they're trying. It's very you're attached to those characters, right? And that's something that he doesn't do well in Game of Thrones. And I think at a certain point, I'm not sure if this is true because I have no idea where the plot is or where it was going, but I think he got addicted to killing his characters a little bit too much, to the point where it's just impossible to watch it because there's no character development, there's no character continuity, so you just can't get invested in anybody because they're going to die. It's not that you think they might die, you just know that eventually they're going to die.
Yeah, you know what? I think I might have mentioned this before, but when I watched Game of Thrones, the only reason why I kept on watching was just because I really hated all the characters. I felt that, I wouldn't want to associate with myself with any of these things, but the only reason I kept on watching is because I was banking on people dying. I was like, oh, please make there be a just God and just have this guy killed.
Yeah, that's a good point. The only way you can watch a Game of Thrones is if you want the characters to die, and then you're like a really happy camper because that's exactly what the books, the movies or the TV shows are about. All right, so we're gonna wrap up. There's no picture of the week this week because we're both Vince is busy, I'm lazy. Basically the same thing, just opposite ends. And so if you want to get in contact with us, you can do so. Email at the3cast.com is the email address. You can email us both ways. If you want to spell out the word 3 or just use the number, I don't care. They both work. And I called myself lazy. I even set up that whole email address. It's kind of great. If you want to get in contact with us on Twitter, I'm at MTWB. Ricky, who's not here, is Ricky_Williams1. Vince is VWHUI. The 3cast is at the 3cast. That one is with the numeral 3. I'm not running 2 Twitter accounts ever. It's just not going to happen. And the same thing with the Facebook is actually the number 3, not the word. Coming up next is the movie Blood Diamond.
I swear to God, I thought we did that one.
I thought we did too, but I went through the archives and I didn't see it. So if you really do think we did it, maybe we'll try something different. But I don't remember us doing it.
Okay.
Anyways, it's another terrible movie that Matt watched and liked for some no discernible reason. Anyways, Leonardo DiCaprio, not a good actor. He's like
plays stereotype.
He's Nick Cage. He's any other actor that plays the same role in every single movie he does. He literally dies in every single movie, Leonardo DiCaprio. What are you doing? Can't you stay alive in a movie? Spoiler alert. Anyways, that is it for us this week. We'll be doing probably Blood Diamond the next time we're around, which will be sometime in October. We'll see you then.
See ya.